Morning. Acts chapter 13. Now, for me, this last month has been kind of a whirlwind with all of our traveling and being gone a Sunday and then back after conference. So, very quick review. In Acts 13, I'm going to focus here, starting in verse 13. But I just want you to remember, over the last several weeks, we've talked about how Barnabas and Saul have been sent out, right? And then beginning in chapter 13, now it's Paul, so I'm good. I won't mess that up anymore. So Paul and Barnabas head out. They bring with them a relative of Barnabas named John Mark. They head out from Antioch in Syria. I'll give you this, right? So we leave from here, which is where there had been such good work being done for Jesus, lots of people getting saved, church being built, the first place that they're called Christians. We remember then we sail across. The church says we think that you guys are set apart for missions. Okay, so we'll go. We sail across here to Cyprus. This is where Barnabas is from. We travel throughout overland. We end up having a big sermon, a confrontation in Paphos. From there, we get on another ship. We head to Perga. So we've traveled roughly 400 miles by this point, most of it by sea. We've got 3 or 4 days probably on a ship, or 5, 2 days maybe to Cyprus, maybe 3 days to Perga. And that's where we leave from. So in 13:13, this is what we have. Now, when Paul and his party set sail from Paphos, they came to Perga in Pamphylia, and John, departing from them, returned to Jerusalem. But when they departed from Perga, they came to Antioch in Pisidia and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. And that's all that Luke gives us. That's all that he tells us. We know, it had been 2 weeks ago, I believe, that we covered the sermon itself, right? Where they say to Paul, hey, do you have anything that you would like to share, anything that you would like to encourage the brethren here in Antioch with? Now, remember, there's 2 Antiochs. We're now up north, right, in Pisidia, in the province of Galatia. Okay. Do you have anything to share? And Paul says, as a matter of fact, I do. And so then he launches into this sermon, right? That we have most of it recorded for us, where he recounts the history of God's faithfulness to the Jewish people, because he's speaking in a synagogue, and then he makes clear that Jesus is the Savior, he's the Messiah that they have been waiting for, and that he is risen. If you remember, verse 30, God raised him from the dead. Verse 33, God raised him from the dead. Verse 37, God raised him from the dead, right? The resurrection, and he just gives it to him. He unloads the whole gospel of good news. What I want to talk about today is this journey. Luke says they set sail from Paphos. They landed in Perga. John went home. And then they went up to Antioch and preached. That's it. That's all that we have. I don't know anything about the sea travel. Not for me. But that was a fairly normal part, I guess, of their life, of travel. I also don't know why John Mark left. we're just not told. Later, we're told that John leaving from Perga, that caused enough of a rift between Paul and Barnabas that they end up going separate ways, because when they're going to go again, Paul says, "Are you ready?" And Barnabas says, "Yeah, let's get John Mark." And Paul says, "I don't go with quitters." So I want you, it's like 120-ish miles from Perga to Antioch. Depending on the route that he took, we don't know exactly what route that he took. It could be up to 150. So that's basically Norfolk. So when you read that they landed in Perga, and from there they traveled to Antioch, and I say it's 150 miles, what do you picture? I mean, do you have any video that plays in your head? I mean, you assume it's like walking to Norfolk? Like, I mean, we go through the Niobrara and then the rest of it's flat? Like, what do you picture? Does that play into your thought process at all as you're reading? Or you're just like, oh, they went here and then they went there? You ever get a map out? As you're reading, as you're studying, you ever get a map out and just try to look, or Google it, or something like that, or whatever search engine you choose? Because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about John Mark leaving. And he doesn't say anything about the sea trip, about any of that travel or anything else, just that they landed in Perga, and John says, nah. I'm told that this is the ruins of Perga, and that what you see is the Taurus Mountains. So to get to Antioch and Pisidia, you have to cross the Taurus Mountains. And I don't know if John Mark landed there with Paul after having traveled through Cyprus, and he looks and Paul says, "I really want to go and minister on the other side of those mountains." And John Mark says, I don't know. We know that there's bad guys that patrol like the coast. We know that there's all kinds of bad guys in the mountains. We know that if you can get to Antioch, for example, is a Roman colony, so that's safe, because the Romans protect that. But the roads, some are safer than others. And some of them you just don't want to be on after dark. Possible, depending on how it went and where they landed, coming off the Mediterranean, and that's what you see. And Barnabas says, we got a good witness in Perga. And John Mark says, I'd rather stay here on the coast. And Paul says, I want to know what's on the other side of the mountains. I'm speculating. I don't know this. What we do know is they didn't spend any time in Perga. They landed, and then they headed over the mountains. Like this. Or this. This actually, down here, is remnants of the Roman road going into that plain on the other side. So is this. See the cobblestones there on the side, working around the side of that cliff? Yep, remnants today of the Roman road going over the Taurus Mountains. And here you can see the highway right now, and then this here is carved out of the rock. That's the Roman road through all that. This, So that's the gates. I don't know if you can see that. It gets a little brown there. That's the gates leading into Antioch, the mountains behind. And in that, again, I'm going off of what they label it, right? I haven't been there. But those ruins, they had kind of a church of St. Paul in Antioch. And again, you see the mountains in the back. So this is a trip that took a week on foot over the mountains. There is some speculation that perhaps, we get this from the book of Galatians. He says, when I was with you, I was ill, I was sick. There's some speculation, knowing what they do from history, that perhaps Paul actually got malaria in Perga, and they went up. This is Antioch's 3,600 feet above sea level. So perhaps that's why they didn't spend a lot of time in Perga, because he got malaria. And so they're trying to get out, away, and get up in the higher elevation, drier climate, that kind of a thing. And that's why they preached up in the Galatian region. We don't know. What I'm getting at is, what would drive you to want to cross those mountains? To go and preach the gospel to people that you have never met. Does that strike you at all? John Mark left. Why did he leave? I don't know. If I were to wager a guess, and that's all that it is, I think it was hard. I think it was really hard. I think it was way harder than he expected. And I think he tapped out and said, that's enough. He wasn't ready. Would you say, in terms of Paul and his motivation, would you say that his encounter with Jesus, that his face-to-face with the resurrected Jesus, would you say that changed his life? Is that fair? Is that fair? That seems fair. Would you say that it changed Paul's life in such a way that there really was no cost that he wasn't willing to bear? That there wasn't an obstacle that he did not think that he and the Holy Spirit could overcome? Would you say that it's fair to conclude that Paul was so completely overtaken with the gospel, so filled with awe at the grace that had been given him? He even says, as a former persecutor of the church, that God would choose me. He says, yeah, I'll cross those mountains. No problem. With malaria? Yep. I'll do that. And I'll go and I'll preach to people that I've never met, because they need to know the kind of forgiveness that I have been given. Is that fair? To arrive at that conclusion based on what we know of Paul and now what I've given you? I mean, you're going to look at that and say, sure, I'll cross that on foot. With a stick, a backpack, and sandals. but Paul did. Beautiful, right? What's that place like when an afternoon thunderstorm rolls in? I'm just saying, when we read these things and it says, they went from here to there, and for us, we just go, oh, okay. That's a week of a treacherous journey up 3,600 feet, through narrow passes. Depending on if you took the actual Roman road, there probably were bridges across the rivers. If not, they had to ford them. Where do you find food on that kind of a journey? Do you have enough to take with you? What kind of shelter do you have if you get caught in a thunderstorm? Right? All of these things that I would consider. And Paul says, I'm good, let's go. They need to hear about Jesus Christ. Now, do you believe that Paul was totally sold out for Jesus? Do you believe that? Why do you believe that? Would you say that his actions would bear that out? The way that he lived his life, you would say, is evidence that he was totally in the service of Jesus. Is that fair? Would people say that about you? What were the obstacles between Paul and the people of Antioch and Pisidia? Right? What are the obstacles between you and the people that you know who don't know Jesus? Are we pretty soft? I mean, can I put it that way? Are we pretty soft? Has God asked you to climb any mountain ranges so that you might be able to tell someone about what Jesus has done for you in your life? But that's an extreme example, right? I mean, this Paul. Can we really compare ourselves to Paul? That's not fair. I made a new friend. I don't make friends easily. I'm grumpy. His name is Dave. Dave is a village missionary. Dave was in this group, this cohort deal that I've been in through Village Missions, through Wheaton College, through the Billy Graham Institute, whatever, Rural Church Institute. Dave went to a church in New Hampshire. Now, we talked about this last week. In order for you to join with Village Missions as a church, you have to request. So the church in New Hampshire said, we are very small, we are unable to meet our needs and get a pastor to come. They came to Village Missions and said, will you help us? Will you supply qualified pastoral leadership to our small group here, to our small church? Will you help to revitalize? And Village Missions looked at it and said, yes, we will. You're the only gospel preaching church in this region. Dave would refer to that region of New Hampshire as being post-evangelical. Says like they had been reached, they had been preached, And then they all moved on, and now there's nobody left. There's no one left that believes. It's like starting over. Dave was there, I think, 3 years, may have been 4. In that time, their church doubled. Dave's in my group. Dave was my prayer partner. Dave was on fire. He loved people, loves people. He would go out and he just witnessed to anyone who would listen. And people were coming to church. And they're growing. And the Saturday before Easter, via text message, that church fired Dave. Because they didn't really like the new people that were coming in. They didn't like that people were getting saved, and people didn't know the rules when they came to church. They weren't behaving the way they were supposed to behave. They were spilling stuff on the carpet, actually. And it just wasn't our kind of people that were coming in. And they wanted Dave to stop reaching out. And they wanted Dave to stop preaching the gospel. And he said no. And they said, well, we want somebody else. Dave's my hero. Are we soft? Do we have it so easy that we don't even know? Here's the thing. We're going to have communion together. And when we have communion together, we've done this, a couple hundred times now over 12 years. And we know what the elements represent. We know that the bread represents his broken body. We know that the cup represents his blood that's shed for us. And we go through and we read from Scripture and we talk about all these things. But what we're proclaiming says, as often as you eat this bread or drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death till he comes. And we're standing there and we're saying with a megaphone within these church walls, I believe all of those things are true. I believe that he died for my sins. I believe that I have forgiveness. I have peace with God. I am made righteous. I believe that he did die, that he rose from the dead. I believe all those things are true. And I believe that if I put my faith in him, that he will wash away my sins as far as the east is from the west. All of those cliches that we use. And we say, I believe that. And we proclaim, I will serve him. But do we mean that? Or do we mean I will serve him if it's convenient? Because I look at this. I look at those mountains. And I see that Paul looked at them too and said, there's people on the other side that need Jesus. And I'm going to go. And I look at my friend Dave and the people in that church that said, please come and help us. And then when Dave preached the gospel and people believed, they said, no, we don't want that. And I think, I am such a wimp. And I'm going to take communion. And I'm going to say, Lord, I proclaim that you are exactly who you say you are, that you did exactly what you said you'd do, that you rose again, that all those things are true, that you have rescued me from an eternity in hell, that you have freed me from slavery to sin, that all those things are true, and that God, you deserve every ounce of my being. And I'm going to proclaim that. And I'm going to look at these guys who have every right to look at me and say, prove it. And so, every communion, I ask the guys to come up and help. Every communion, we try to just focus on the one thing and sort of just have one thought in mind. And I'm just asking you, as we do this together, just chew on that. What has He asked of me? And what have I given? Paul's life, Dave's life, they testify to the fact that they lived out what they said they believed. Does my life testify to that? And if not, Lord, what can I do so that I can raise my level of service, my evangelistic temperature, just 1 degree? I don't need to go to Turkey and climb these mountains. Okay, all I need to do is walk across the street. All I need to do is invite someone to my house for burgers. All I have to do is reach out. What's something that I can do to move it 1 degree? Guys, if you'd come forward.